welcome back to Movie Battleground. I'm your host, like for the second time I'm hosting. My name is Super Sharma, and this is the DC Battleground, like because Justice League is all around the corner, and I'm really excited. I'm seeing it tomorrow. Unlike you guys watching it Friday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we have two very we have a very exciting match here. Like I'll let you guys introduce yourself. Like, we have Andrew Hayes
Hey, what's going
against
on?
going up against Alex Worden.
What's up, everybody?
Right, so before we start, you guys want to do any sort of banter against one another?
I mean,
I'll give you guys time.
I have nothing really bad to say other than it's good. I know it's going to be a good fight.
Yeah,
I mean,
honestly, this is a totally different realm than we're used to competing in, so I'm looking forward to it. I've been stoked on this since Matt and Aaron put me in this spot, and this is the one fight I've been waiting weeks for. I can't wait to do this.
With all that, we'll just start with the first question. Like we have various great DC movies like the legendary Batman v Superman and Man of Steel, and not to mention the earlier release of this year, Wonder Woman. So my question to you guys is, what would be your best DC movie? With and with Alex or Andrew, what was this on?
doesn't matter to me. You could start first.
Actually, no, you go ahead first.
Yeah.
All right, if you say so. All right. The movie I chose for best DC movie is actually Batman Begins. I chose it because I think out of all of them, it's the best story. It's definitely the best origin story. I think not only in DC, just the best origin story of all time. It really, I think it gives us like a different take on what how Batman came to be. I mean, yes, they obviously show his parents dying, but I find it very interesting how he gets all his skills by training. I really enjoy Liam Neeson. I think Liam Neeson and especially Cillian Murphy are very underrated, just villains in general. When they're so fantastic, and I just it started off a great universe, or not universe, but it's the beginning to a great trilogy.
Yeah.
And Alex?
Well, it's funny you brought up that Batman Begins was the start to a great trilogy because, well, my pick for the best DC movie, and very possibly still the best movie based on any superhero, is The Dark Knight. This is the gold standard by which all superhero movies must be measured by for a reason. Christopher Nolan took what he had started with in Batman Begins and built it to a level that nobody expected in The Dark Knight. The point where it was the first billion-dollar superhero blockbuster and gave us a performance by several actors who made themselves iconic to the roles they inhabit, to the point where you can't separate the Joker from Heath Ledger anymore. You can't separate Batman from Christian Bale. You can't separate Harvey Dent from Aaron Eckhart. Gary Oldman. The cast carried over, and the new introductions, Maggie Gyllenhaal as Rachel Dawes stepping in, it did amazing things. And ultimately, it became the gold standard by being a crime movie, a mob movie, and a human think piece wrapped around a superhero movie and elevating the genre to the next level that it needed to go to.
But after your opening arguments, we'll do the normal arguments. We'll give you like around 6 minutes to start, and we'll start with whoever starts first.
Well, ultimately, the thing is, while Batman Begins was a good attempt at telling the origins of Batman, it ultimately falls apart in the third act, whereas The Dark Knight has tight pacing throughout, keeping the tension high in the story by delivering twists and turns. At the same time, there are some deficiencies with Batman Begins as well in its acting. I mean, Katie Holmes as Rachel Dawes. No one's going to argue that that was a great performance. Maggie Gyllenhaal outclassed her just by showing up on set on The Dark Knight. Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow was good, but he was even better in his cameo appearances in the 2 future films. And the double turn of Ra's al Ghul is dead, no, Ra's al Ghul's alive, he was just a ploy the whole time, you could see that coming from a mile away the second they ended that sequence, that Ducard wasn't dead. He was going to show up again. Oh, and yeah, he is Ra's al Ghul. You can tell by the beard and mustache. At the same time, though, The Dark Knight, it delivers on so many levels by giving you engaging villains, but the Joker is the central focus of the story, along with Batman. It's telling a tale of these two completely opposite sides going to war, the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object, and what can happen when an entire city is at stake in their battle, with great supporting characters all around them, both in the mobsters, the cops, the DA's office, all around them, telling this great clash story.
I think the big problem with The Dark Knight is, yes, I think there's no denying that, the Joker was, Heath Ledger's version of the Joker was fantastic. There's no denying that. But I think that anytime the Joker isn't on screen, it gets a little boring, and it's just not as investing as when the Joker is on screen. Whenever you don't see the Joker, it's just, I really don't care. I care when the Joker's on, and another big problem I have with The Dark Knight is that I feel that Harvey Dent turning into Two-Face just happens a little too quickly and happens only purely for the sake of the movie and nothing else. It happens to move the plot along. And I think that The Dark Knight has some pacing issues. I think it's a little too long. It could have been maybe 15, 20 minutes, a little bit shorter. And I personally think that Christian Bale acts a little bit better as Batman and Bruce Wayne in this one than he does in The Dark Knight. And I also can say the same thing. I also believe the same thing for Michael Caine as Alfred.
Well, Michael Caine's Alfred, honestly, in the second film, he doesn't need to have that much screen time, but he is effective in every moment that he's in. When it comes to Bruce Wayne's character, we know the stakes that he's going into in this second film. The whole point of the origin story is you're getting the origin out of the way. The Dark Knight is the meat and potatoes of the franchise. It's the meat and potatoes of Batman's journey. Now that he's become the Batman, what's he going to do when he has to face something that's bigger than him? Something that he can't just face alone. It sets up those stakes perfectly with the rise of the Joker alongside the mobsters of Gotham led by Sal Maroni and the Chechen. And at the same time, the DA's office falling apart at the seams because they can't handle it alone either. Neither side really knowing who they can trust and work together with because of the mayhem brought on by the Joker. As for your point of no scenes without the Joker being engaging, the rooftop jump in the middle of Hong Kong, that scene was spectacular. Harvey's turn scene when Gordon goes to his hospital bed, that is just emotional, gut-wrenching. The scene before that, when Batman's at his bedside and leaves him the coin, that twists the knife in your heart. The loss of Rachel is one of the most heartbreaking things that has happened in any superhero movie. And you wouldn't have felt those stakes if it was still Katie Holmes in the role. In Katie Holmes in the role, you'll be like, oh my God, thank God she's gone. But with Maggie Gyllenhaal, the little bit of time she had in that movie, she rebuilt that character and made you feel for Rachel. And by proxy, gave us a bit more to Bruce. You could feel why Bruce loved Rachel in this movie, and her performance alone helped turn that around. So much so that for the second half of the film, the stakes for Bruce are finally personal. It's finally something he has to confront and stop. This madman has taken away the only thing in the world he truly cares about, so all he can do to fight back is to endure and stop him, as instructed by Alfred in that great scene early in the film when he contemplates giving up Batman. He takes his words, he endures, he comes up with a plan, he executes, and he saves the day. But not before the twist ending with Harvey. That twist ending with Harvey is one of the most heart-wrenching scenes, right up there with Rachel's death. Rachel's death is just a little bit higher, but that scene with Harvey's turn, him confronting Batman, holding Gordon's family hostage, that is high stakes, the best possible way to end that film, and ultimately just pays off so well with that great ending of Batman saying, I did it. I killed those people. That's what you tell everybody. Harvey has to die the hero. I'll take the hit for this, and I'm going to go away because I need to do this.
All right. What you say you don't like I guess the turn with Harvey? That's something I also saw coming a mile away. If you want to talk about things he saw coming a mile away. I saw that coming from a mile away. And I think that Katie Holmes is not nearly as bad as you're saying. I think Katie Holmes does a pretty solid job as Rachel. And
that's the point. She's pretty solid. Maggie Gyllenhaal is amazing. Maggie Gyllenhaal makes you finally care about the character of Rachel Dawes. And at the same time, one thing I will point out that I've always had a problem with Batman Begins, it's a movie that builds itself up on building up the realism of Batman. And the film's entire final conceit is that the villains have this giant microwave emitter that they're going to use to fry the city's water supply and vaporize it and spray them with this toxin. That is just some B-grade comic book BS right there. At least the Joker's plan has some practicality. For a movie that prides itself on building up a realistic with the right amount of money, the right tools, and the right training, this is how someone could feasibly become Batman. The whole final act of the film falls apart with just that one bad choice of a plot device.
If you want to talk about realistic, I think that there could be someone crazy enough to dress up as a clown.
Time.
That was
we'll start. Yeah, it's 6 minutes. That's why you should make use of it.
Yeah.
I mean, now we'll let you guys do your closing arguments. It was a very close match. We'll start with. What's the start first?
I went first for the opening, so I guess I'll go first for the closing. But anyway, time ran out. As I was saying, I think that just what happens to Harvey. Yes, you could obviously see that losing Rachel makes him go nuts, but I think just I don't think he would survive as long as he did, just from like the injuries that he sustained. I just think he would die pretty quickly. So I think that all that stuff wouldn't have happened if this was real life. But then again, it's a movie, whatever. But I do think Batman Begins. I didn't see Ra's al Ghul that whole turn coming. I didn't see that, and I think that Liam Neeson does a fantastic job, and even more so, I think the Scarecrow is a great villain. I think that the reason that people loved seeing him in his 2 cameos in the next 2 is because of how great he was, not because of anything else. I think that Christian Bale, this is the best he has done as Batman, and I think that this is just the best writing. If the Batman Begins wasn't as good as it was, there would be no Dark Knight.
All right, Alex, your closing statements.
All right. Well, ultimately, there is a good point there that without Batman Begins being a solid movie and a good movie, you wouldn't have The Dark Knight. But that's just it. It's like the Lord of the Rings trilogy or Star Wars. It's the opening chapter. The real meat and potatoes of the story is what happens in the second act. And that's what we get with The Dark Knight, a masterpiece, the bar standard of superhero filmmaking, a film that honestly is part crime movie, part drama, part comedy in points, but ultimately, at its core, is an emotional tale about the Batman having to confront his greatest nemesis, the Joker, a character whose instant first appearance on screen in that opening sequence is just amazing. It's the first film that used IMAX cameras for its cinematography. For a Hollywood film, that was unheard of. Now it's the standard because The Dark Knight proved that it works. And ultimately, things done in this film and choices, the choice of practical effects, filming in Chicago, using IMAX cameras, and trying to keep as much of the Joker's dialogue as ad-libbed as possible, including those handheld camera scenes that really ratchet up the tension, are great choices by Christopher Nolan, proving that while in the first film he wanted to establish a world where a real Batman could exist and kind of failed with that MacGuffin device, in this movie, he lets it loose. He gives you a world where not only Batman could practically exist, the Joker could practically exist. This is the type of psychopath that, sadly, we could see in our modern world, and we have, unfortunately, with the rise of modern terrorism, but let's not get into that. The point being, the Joker is an iconic villain for a reason. I'll get into that in another fight later on, spoilers. But ultimately, this is just a great movie for a reason. It ratchets up the stakes, it gives the characters more to breathe in and more to fight through, and at the end of the day, it gives you an ending that ultimately you wouldn't expect in a superhero movie, and a great story that has stood the test of time in the last 9 years and is still the bar standard for superhero. What is a great superhero movie?
All right. With that, with those closing arguments, I'll look over the facts which I've written down. Um, it was a very close fight again between you two. Like, I mean, I've personally seen both of these movies like multiple times, and yeah, mostly one of the like your arguments they all checked out. Like regarding Maggie Gyllenhaal giving the better performance than Kay Holmes. I think that's more towards whose opinion people's opinion, who's better, whether it's Kay Holmes or Maggie Gyllenhaal. Um, Going to runtime, The Dark Knight is actually a bit longer than Batman Begins. Batman Begins has around 140 minutes, and Dark Knight is 152 minutes. So, um, and I'm gonna give this point to Alex. First one.
I wasn't winning
Yeah.
that fight. I knew that. The Dark Knight's my favorite film of all time. There's no.
He
I
he had a stronger argument, in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
In that.
yeah. No,
I
I'm
mean,
just there was for me. There's no way to really have a solid argument against the Dark Knight.
Nope, no, there isn't.
Yeah,
was,
I mean, like I said, that was hard because it's my favorite film of all time. So
I mean, the winning argument was when he said that like you could see that a mile away that Ray Shago, like Liam Neeson's character is actually Ray Shago. Um, Not a lot of people will say that, but basically the mustache. Yeah, I would agree. The mustache gave it away, and it was not really a best like surprise element than the Dark Knight, which has that like vicious villain as in the Joker. But so the point goes to Alex, and we're gonna move on to our second round. I mean, we have all these great movies, but you should know that sometimes DC they fuck up, and one of those fuck ups was 2011's Green Lantern. So the question number two is, what would be your worst DC movie?
All right.
We're gonna start. Right.
Yeah, I believe it's my turn to start this. Yeah, I think it's my turn to start this time. Yeah. So when you say the worst DC movie, there's a movie that came out in 2004 that thankfully a lot of people have forgotten about, and that would be Catwoman. Now, I'm not sure if anybody remembers, but do you know the name Pitoff? You probably shouldn't, because this was the last movie he ever directed. This is cinematic garbage at its highest. It is just completely unwatchable. They take a developmental hell. People have heard that term. This movie was originally supposed to be made in the 90s with Michelle Pfeiffer starring, carrying on her role from Batman Returns, languished, and then got so many rewrites that it's just Catwoman in name only. Halle Berry stars as Patience Prentice, a name I'm very sad that I remember, a meek, mild-mannered worker at a cosmetics company who, after an accident, turns into every young boy's S&M's fetish dream in Catwoman, constantly running around in leather suits, except when she has to do stunts, because that's just blatant CGI, worse than the original Grand Theft Auto 3, and a movie that has no coherent narrative, a movie whose plot is purely just based in really bad CG action for a character, and a movie that is nigh unwatchable unless you're watching people rip it apart like the Nostalgia Critic.
all right,
Andrew.
okay. The movie I chose was actually Suicide Squad. Now, Suicide Squad, I think there's no denying that both of these movies are just absolutely awful. And the problem with Suicide Squad is not only is it awful, but it was highly disappointing. It was on many people's most anticipated of the year, including myself, because it was introduced to many characters that you haven't seen on screen before, that you wanted to see on screen before, like Harley Quinn and Deadshot, Killer Croc, all these characters, and all it ended up being was just a mess of a film with probably one of the worst villains that I've ever seen in my life. It was supposed to be DCEU's version of Guardian of the Galaxy, and Guardian of the Galaxy is a fun movie, and this was not fun. This was sad, pathetic, boring, and it makes me mad thinking about it.
All right, we're gonna continue with the debate, and like whenever you guys are ready. We'll do like the opening one was 6 minutes. Now we're gonna do like whenever you guys are ready.
All right.
Well, ultimately, the thing is, I think Suicide Squad kind of gets a bad rap. Ultimately, yes, it did give us the cinematic introduction of Harley Quinn, and honestly, Margot Robbie's portrayal of Harley Quinn, while not exactly what everybody would have hoped for in an adaptation of Bruce Timm and Alan Burnett and Paul Dini's version from the 1992 animated series, she's an adaptation of the DC Rebirth line Harley Quinn, where she's a little bit more overly sexualized, a little bit more independent, a little bit more violent, and that's actually really well done. You've also got Will Smith's Deadshot, who honestly gives just enough with the character to give you some pathos about the guy. Yeah, he's a contract killer, but he's a contract killer who has morals and does it for a reason, trying to win back his daughter. Jai Courtney as Captain Boomerang, I never thought I'd like Jai Courtney in a movie. All they had to do was just give him a character where he can use his natural Australian accent, and he's hilarious. The scene where he's fighting in the middle of the group, realizing he's outmatched just by being able to throw a boomerang, and then randomly cracks a beer, that still gets me in stitches when I think about it. And you've got Viola Davis as Amanda Waller. She brings just the right amount of presence to the wall that, yeah, whenever she's on screen, you know, there's a 90% chance either she's going to smack someone down verbally or shoot somebody, which she does quite a lot in this movie, perfectly within the character of Amanda Waller. Catwoman, on the other hand, it has nothing to do with any existing Catwoman mythos. It has nothing to do with Selena Kyle or any other version of Catwoman we've ever seen before. The plot is completely incoherent. The story just goes nowhere. The basketball scene in the middle of the movie, where they just cut back and forth between wide shots of stunt doubles and close-up shots of her and Benjamin Bratt faking a romance, is just pathetic. Sharon Stone is a complete waste as the villain. Poorly written, poorly used. You want to talk about a poorly used villain? Sharon Stone's character in Catwoman is just the worst. There's a reason why they didn't continue this on with more films. A, because nobody liked it. B, because it bombed at the box office. And C, because people realize it has nothing to do with the real character of Catwoman we know and love.
I think the main difference between what I think separates Suicide Squad and Catwoman is I can, at least sit down with my buddies and sort of have a good time watching Catwoman. I could laugh at it. Well, with Suicide Squad, I just bored out of my mind, and I'm just angry because of how disappointing it was, and because you could see the potential of Suicide Squad, and it literally just falls flat on its face. The reason Jai Courtney is, I wouldn't even say he's good. I would say he's fine, is because he's pretty much the lesser of two evils, because nobody else means anything. And Enchantress is just, there's no reason for her. You could see Enchantress turning on the squad, coming. Like, you want to talk about things coming from a mile away, that is coming from a mile away. And I think the big problem that I have with it is that I don't think there's enough at stake in Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad, they're just a band of bad guys that are supposed to work for Amanda Waller, and if they don't do anything that they're supposed to, if they try running away, they die. And there's legitimately one person that dies from that, and you could tell that he's going to die because there's no reason. They built up no character development for Slipknot, and you just don't care. When El Diablo ends up dying, there's no reason to care for him. Yes, he has a family, but that just seems something that's been done before and cliched. There's no reason to care about most of the characters.
At the same time, though, there is a reason to care about some of the characters. Honestly, they do enough with Will Smith's character of Deadshot, building him up in the movie, that when you have that scene near the end of the film where Enchantress is tempting their minds with their greatest fantasy, you can see it in Deadshot's fantasy that he wants to kill the Batman. He wants to be the biggest, baddest guy around. But when he realizes that's a falsehood, you finally get that redeeming moment for him that finally he's admitting everything he's done up to this point has been wrong, and he's willing to take the steps to right those wrongs. With Harley Quinn, you see in her scene, all she wants to do is just have a life with the man she loves, the Joker, and she's going to take steps to do that as well. Ultimately, building up those two characters, they do that very well through the film. The flashbacks of Harley Quinn's origin are done extremely well, very faithful to the original version by Bruce Timm and Paul Dini in Mad Love, up to the point of her turning into Harley Quinn. The comedy between the actors, the chemistry between the actors is really palatable. You can feel it coming through the screen that these people love working together. They love being on screen together, and they're having a good time doing it, and that's the enjoyment you can get out of the movie. Catwoman, you get none of that. You get a bunch of people who were showed up to make a paycheck and look good when special effects are going by in behind them. Halle Berry, you can tell she gave no shits about this movie she was making other than getting a big fat paycheck at the end. Sharon Stone was happy she could just continue her comeback tour. Benjamin Bratt, I don't think that guy made anything he cared about from 1999 up until about 2008 or 2009 at that point. And ultimately, you can tell no one cared about what they were making with Catwoman other than being obliged to make it because they wanted to get a superhero movie out in the theaters for the summer to compete with Spider-Man 2.
I also think another big problem with Suicide Squad and why it's so bad is that I can't believe I haven't even talked about this, is Jared Leto as the Joker. I think he's completely miscast. Is by far the worst Joker. It's just so weird, and just he is not the Joker. The Joker would not be like that.
The thing is, though, the way they're portraying the Joker, while it's not 100% faithful to the comics, it's a Joker that they want to drive the point home is striving for Harley Quinn. It's a version where, while not true to the comics, he loves Harley as much as she loves the Joker, and they're really trying to drive that point home. Successful or not, who knows? But it's a minor point in the movie, to be honest. The big story is the fight with Enchantress. These people coming together to do right for the first time in their goddamn lives, and they actually do it. The fight between El Diablo and Incubus near the end of the film, yeah, it's a bit of a CGI fest, but it's a well-choreographed, well-done CGI fest. The fact that each character has a part to play in the finale of stopping Enchantress and getting June Moon back is actually pretty well scripted and well put together. Harley getting the big moment of finally revealing that, yeah, I'll be a good guy for once, that was actually pretty damn well done, if you ask me. It was kind of surprising to see it in the theater. And ultimately, it's a fun movie.
Time. So that was a really great argument. I actually gave you guys a little bit more time. This was supposed to be 5 minutes, but I gave you like 6 minutes already. I mean, it was a very close argument, but I feel like this round, like Alex, you didn't talk too much about Catwoman, but yeah, you made some great hits. You made some great hits in the movie, like how the movie is bad, how the movie is really not. It's not about Catwoman. It's basically just a name. That's a great hit. And well, now, before I make my decision, we'll just go to the closing statements. We'll start with Andrew.
All right. Like I said, the biggest problem with Suicide Squad is just that it's a big, I guess, ensemble movie where you're supposed to care about a bunch of characters and you care to little to know them. The reason Deadshot and Harley Quinn, they're the quote unquote the best, is because everybody else is just so bad. They're not good. They're just okay. I feel like they could have been done a lot better. With you saying that it isn't faithful to the comics, I'd rather have something that at least somewhat resembles to the comics. Harley Quinn and Joker's relationship, I hated it because it's not what Harley Quinn and Joker's relationship is about. And it's just I feel like there was just a lot of wasted potential in a lot of the characters. Like Killer Croc, I thought he could have been some big badass dude, but he's not. He's just a boring character that pretty much could have been played by anybody. Same thing with El Diablo. He could have been cool, but could have been played by anybody. I think there's no distinctive role in Suicide Squad that goes, I can't see anybody else playing that again. And while I could see other people playing it, and I feel like the only reason you could say that about Catwoman is because it has been done. And yes, it has been done better. But the thing is that Michelle Pfeiffer was so good that I feel like nobody like it was just Halle Berry was up against the wall to begin with. Well, yes, we've had animated versions and whatnot, but people have finally been waiting to see the characters on screen, and I feel like they could have been done a lot better. I believe this movie is under 2 hours, and it feels like it's like 3 hours. It's boring, very slow paced. The ending is just stupid. It's a CGI fest, like you said, but the CGI is so poorly done. Enchantress is such a bad villain, and I feel like a protagonist is only as good as his antagonist, and Enchantress was a shitty antagonist. So it hurts all the other characters because she's not as good. What does anything mean?
Alex, your closing statement.
You want to talk about incoherence? That is Catwoman to a T. This movie, when it was made, it had no reason to be made. Had it been made 8 or 9 years prior, when Michelle Pfeiffer could have continued on in the role of Catwoman, and you could have had Selena Kyle going up against a female mob boss, this would have been an interesting movie. It could have been a very good movie. Instead, you get Halle Berry and Sharon Stone phoning in performances as everyone's favorite nerdy girl gone bad versus a cosmetic CEO who's coated her skin in so much shit over the years that she's turned it diamond tough, and yet she can still be beaten by being thrown out of a window. That makes absolutely no sense. The supporting performances do nothing to enhance the film other than make you groan. You're wasting Benjamin Bratt, who, well, to be fair, at the time, he was kind of wasteful. Alex Borstein, playing the best friend of Patience Prentice. She's completely wasted. You've got Frances Conroy, one of the best actresses working in the 2000s because of her role on 6 Feet Under. She has a cameo in this film that just reinforces the point that, hey, we're all pro-women, but not really, because our lead hero is walking around in something that would honestly make the wet dreams of Clive Barker look tame by comparison. The CGI in the film is horrible. The choice to make Catwoman a CGI character when she's in action, as I said earlier, it is really bad. So bad. It makes the Grand Theft Auto games by Rockstar for the PlayStation 2 look like high cinema that you can play on a big screen in comparison. And ultimately, the movie has no reason to exist other than to be a superhero movie that Warner's and DC could throw out in competition to Spider-Man 2 that year it came out, and really was a waste of everybody's time to make, other than Halle Berry making a fat paycheck that even she regrets by accepting her Razzie for Worst Actress for this movie.
All right. Both of you guys really got it in the closing arguments there. Yeah, it was another close argument. I really to give it to you. Like, making a decision for this match isn't really that easy. And you guys gave facts after facts regarding both movies, which surprisingly, like Andrew, some of the things which you said about Suicide Squad, I would agree regarding the villain. I mean, basically people call her the hula hoop singer, like something, and um, yeah, the relationship between Harley and Joker not being the best. I mean, Jared Leto not being the best Joker. That's a really good argument. And Alex, your argument regarding Catwoman. I mean, it's no surprise that Catwoman is really the worst movie of all time. Like, you gave all the facts there. So this is really tough to choose. Basically, I'm looking at who gave basically the hardest argument, and all comes down towards the closing statements. I'm gonna have to give Andrew this one.
Okay.
Nice.
Is he gave mostly the like, because of his argument going why Suicide Squad is the worst movie of all time, worst DC movie of all time. Agree. I mean, this is a debate. Yeah, it happens. Like, he gave the best argument for this question. All right, so moving on to question number 3. Like, we all have our favorite actors in all these DC movies. So, Question number three would be like, who gave the best performance in a DC movie? This time we'll start with Andrew.
All right. I think the best performance in a DC movie is by far um, Christopher Reeves as Superman. I think that what makes it so great, he really embodies what Superman is. He Superman stands for hope, and that's exactly what Christopher Reeves is. When I think of Superman, I think of nobody else but Christopher Reeves. I think he does so good that there's no debate who the best Superman is. When people say who the best Superman is, they say immediately Christopher Reeves, and that's because of how well his performance was, not only in the first one, but in all of them. But specifically the first one, I think he's the best at. And he, like I said, he just embodies what Superman stands for in that role. And when I'm watching it, he is Superman.
All right, Alex.
Okay. Well, I alluded to it in our earlier match in round one, or the earlier fight in round one, but come on. The best actor, the best portrayal of a character in any DC movie is Heath Ledger's Joker. Winning the Oscar aside, this is a movie that crutches on a hero needing a strong villain. I hold that point that you don't really have that strong a set of villains in Batman Begins. It's about Batman becoming Batman. This movie, it needs to amp up the stakes. And what you got with Heath Ledger's Joker was just that. The stakes dialed up past 11 all the way to 15 and throwing the dial out the window. This is a character and a portrayal of the character that nobody expected. We came before this with Mark Hamill's version from the animated series and Jack Nicholson's version from 1989's Batman, Cesar Romero's Joker, all very different takes on the character. Ledger brought something new to the table, something unexpected, an agent of chaos, something to rival a self-made Batman with millions of dollars behind his armor, a guy who ultimately becomes great because you can't predict his next move. Maybe he doesn't even know what his next move is. As he says in the film, he's like a dog chasing cars. You never know what he's going to do when he gets one. He's just going to keep doing it until he does and see what happens. The way Ledger chose to portray the Joker as that agent of chaos, as that uncertain factor in Gotham, bringing the city to its knees just by killing a couple of people, blowing up a couple of vehicles, and making a couple of threats, is really a testament to his presence and his acting in the role, and something that, honestly, we'll probably never see repeated again because no one's ever going to do it better than him. Jared Leto tried. He mercifully failed because no one's going to top Heath Ledger as the Joker unless you take it in a completely different direction like what Heath Ledger did.
All right. An argument's already been made. I'll give you guys, this time I'll give you guys 6 minutes to we'll start the clock. Whoever starts, I'll go first.
Okay. I want to bring up a couple of things that Andrew had said. One, the fact that Christopher Reeve embodies what Superman stands for. Realistically, yes, Superman stands for truth, justice, and the American way. But really, Superman's an allegory for a god walking amongst men and making the choice to do right rather than do right by oneself. Christopher Reeve in this movie is a goddamn Boy Scout. He really just ultimately at points in the film is so hammy that when you go back and rewatch it, yeah, it's cool, it's endearing, the effects are great, the way they made him fly in the film, undone before, but his actual performance and the actual portrayal of the character, it's kind of boring at points. Whereas with the Joker, he never gets boring. He never stops being boring. He continues on and on and on and gives you new twists. The scene where he shows up in the hospital dressed in the nurse's gown and shoots the cop in the face as he comes through the door, you wouldn't have seen that coming a mile away. That was awesome. You also bring up the fact that there's no debate of who's the best Superman. The reason there's no debate of who's the best Superman is because every Superman that's come after Christopher Reeve has been boring because they've been poorly written. Reeve himself was even a little poorly written after the first movie. That comes down to the fact that you had the great Mario Puzo teaming with Richard Donner to try and make the best Superman movie possible, and even then, it gets a little boring at points. Whereas with the Joker, as I mentioned, you've already had great portrayals from Cesar Romero, great portrayal from Jack Nicholson in 1989, Mark Hamill's animated series, all of which give you just slightly different takes on the character. Ledger had to take it in a completely different direction, creating this character, this agent of chaos. Is he a war vet with PTSD? Is he the son of a drunk? Is he the scorned lover of a gambler? We don't know, and we don't care, because the portrayal he gives us is completely engrossing. infuriating at points because you love him and you don't want to love him because he is so good at being bad, like any villain should be, that you just have to endear yourself to him and hope that, for God's sakes, he doesn't do any more harm than he already has.
All right. While there's no denying that Heath Ledger's Joker is great, I think that, like I said, I don't think Henry Cavill is a bad Superman. I actually don't. But when comparing him to Christopher Reeves, there's no debate. It's Christopher Reeves. Same thing with Brandon Routh. I don't think he's a terrible Superman. But when comparing him to Christopher Reeves, again, no debate. I think could be some debate with the Joker on whether who the best one is. Some people, they prefer, Jack Nicholson's, or some people really like Mark Hamill's version of the Joker. There may even be. I think there are some people that like Troy Baker's version of the Joker. But when it comes to Superman, everybody's going to say that Christopher Reeves is the best. And I don't think it's boring at all. I think he is very entertaining. And I think very, while it is a very well-written character, I think that Christopher Reeves elevates, the performance of elevates the performance of, or elevates the character of Superman, rather, and without, the movie, the first one would not, or most of them, fourth one wasn't good at all, but the first one.
Well, you just said it right there. The fourth film, which he had the most creative hand in making and had the most opportunity to show that he knew exactly what goes into the character of Superman, he crashed and burned so bad by driving home the whole nuclear peace argument. Also, a point I will make, my personal favorite version of Superman is actually George Reeves' Superman from the 1950s Adventures of Superman TV series, which really, Christopher Reeve, if you go back and look at it, he's just trying to do a big screen version of that. But the point with Heath Ledger's Joker is he had so many great versions already come before him. Cesar Romero's version from the 66 series, Nicholson's performance in 89, Mark Hamill's great performances over the years in the Bruce Timm-verse. He had to do something different. He had to go full method. He took inspiration from so many different sources of the Joker. The Man Who Laughs, The Long Halloween, the then unpublished Grant Morrison, The Clown at Midnight, Arkham Asylum by Grant Morrison, so many great different versions of the Joker to create something wholly new, wholly original, wholly unexpected. A Joker that you could believe could live in modern times. A war vet, or son of an alcoholic abused, or scorned lover of a gambling addict, deciding to paint up his face and go blow the whole town up, damn the consequences. Sadly, as something you can believe could exist in today's world if you just push the wrong person the wrong way. Whereas with Christopher Reeve's Superman is supposed to be about a god walking amongst men. You never really get that sense of godliness from Superman's character because they give him nothing to do in that first movie other than stop a couple of missiles and rescue a few people from a helicopter crash. Otherwise, he's just boring. The fact that he's taken down by one quick little lace of kryptonite around his neck, that's just plain stupid. He should have seen that coming a mile away. That's just poor writing and poor plot devising. With the Joker, he has to be taken down thanks to the combined efforts of the GCPD, the citizens of Gotham foiling his plan, and Batman finally getting his hands around the Joker's neck. And when the Batman does get him, you think for that split second when he's dropping out of the skyscraper, Batman's going to let him fall. He's going to cross that line because he has driven him to the edge. And when he doesn't, that's a surprise. That is a huge shocker. I remember sitting in the theater opening night in 2008, watching that scene and thinking he's going to die, not because of this real life circumstances, but because it would serve the story best, that when Batman saves him and Joker reveals that one last twist in the gut with a knife of Harvey, that is just perfect character work right there by Heath Ledger. The fact that Christopher Nolan, a notoriously picky filmmaker, trusted Ledger to film those handheld cam scenes shows faith in an actor's performance. And you've never gotten that before in a superhero movie with someone until Ledger, because he gave it everything.
We've already reached 6 minutes. I would have to say now, like, Andrew, you could jump in, like, during arguments, you could cut in with each other. I mean, you don't have to just sit there because we only had like 6 minutes and most of the argument was made by Alex.
That's fine.
Well, I mean, that's fine that you win the match instead of you. I mean, let's go with the closing arguments. Whoever starts
All
first.
right, I guess I'm first. Um. Anyway, geez, I lost my train of thought. I this happened to me in the last match too. Trust me, it's terrible. Um. All right, but like I said, I don't think. I don't think Superman's all that boring. I think it's just very interesting. And yes, he is a god, but I could very much relate to Superman. I know he's a god. He's a guy with superpowers. I'm not, but like just the other aspects of what he stands for, who he is morally, that's what I can relate to, and that's what I can get behind. I'm a Boy Scout, so maybe that's why, but I'm pretty sure like a lot of people who aren't Boy Scouts can, relate to him. Um, yeah, I mean, I have nothing much to say.
Alex.
All right. Well, I can finish off with one last little point. I want to point out something about the character of Superman. If anyone's ever seen it, there was a 2012 short film made on YouTube called The Death and Return of Superman, or Daros, by Max Landis, where he points out the one point that everyone should know in understanding the character of Superman. No one gives a fuck about Superman. They care about Clark Kent. In this movie, you don't get much of Clark Kent. You're just building up to Superman. And that's where this movie and Christopher Reeve's portrayal ultimately fail. He's always Superman. Clark Kent is just his mask to mock humanity. They don't delve into the man in between the two. The farm boy who grew up in Kansas and the Man of Steel who is out saving Metropolis and is the last son of Krypton. With Ledger's Joker, you get something wholly original that had to be wholly original because of everything that came before it. An actor who drove himself to madness behind the scenes, keeping notebooks, scribbling down every grim thought that came into his head just to inform his performance. Improv like you've never seen before for an auteur filmmaker like Nolan. One scene I love is the fact that GCPD, the MCU scene, when they announced Gordon's commissioner, that scene where he claps like this, that gives me chills, and that was completely improv as well. The faith that Nolan had in Ledger's performance shines through to the camera because this is a master at work. Heath Ledger could have been one of the greatest all-time actors, and this movie cements that stamp that, yeah, even though he lived a short life, it proves that he was someone who had what it takes to be one of the greatest actors of all time because he took a character that honestly everyone thought they should not touch because of all the great portrayals before him and made something iconic, made something lasting, made someone that now you cannot think of the Joker and not associate Heath Ledger into that role.
Great argument, guys, both of you, to be honest, yeah. I have to be honest, like, we have already a clear winner over here because
You could just give him the point.
Andrew, like, to be honest, like, you made some good arguments regarding the character of Christopher Reeve. I mean, we all basically grew up with Christopher Reeve as our Superman, right? I know someone grew up with George Reeves. That person is older. Yeah. Sorry, Andrew. This question goes to Alex.
Oh yeah, this was another one where I couldn't argue because honestly, Heath Ledger's Joker is my favorite performance of all time. So it was another one where I can't like talk bad about it because I think it's so perfect. So if I can't find anything wrong with it, I can't argue on why it's so bad or
Actually,
not as
you
good.
can. You could argue that these eras are very different. I mean, Christopher Reeve, Superman. That was in the era of like when DC movies are bright and funny. Basically, they're like Marvel movies, and Heath Ledger Joker is in the era of dark and gritty. You could just say that. I'm just saying. Seriously, during arguments, you guys could just jump over each other's argument.
Oh
You
yeah,
don't
I
have to
know.
wait
It's
for
just
one
that I
another.
couldn't like really say anything bad about it because he was just so right in everything.
You could maybe like prove it wrong or something but it's okay. Okay, moving on before we it on over here. All right, we're gonna go to our last question for our main round, and I hope I get this correctly. If what Aaron told me is what he says is correct. He wants. I mean, the question number four is, what would be the best back-to-back DC movies? I mean, based on I mean, Aaron gave you the list,
Yep.
Yeah,
and
he gave us a
basically,
list, and we had to choose 3 movies.
and yeah, choose. You have to choose three movies in which DC released it in a consecutively. Since we, I mean, DC movies we rarely get them like released on the same year. Unless you pick 2016, which has Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad. So we're gonna go now with Alex to start with the opening argument.
All right. All right. Well, the premise of this question is to name the best trio of movies produced by Warner Brothers, who are the primary distributor, back to back to back by Warner's and DC about those characters. Really, you can't not acknowledge the biggest movie at the time that they created based on DC, which starts with Tim Burton's Batman, a movie that redefined what a summer blockbuster could be, not only in its amazing quality and look and feel and great portrayal of the characters, but also in its money-making potential. They followed that up with giving Tim Burton the freedom to do whatever he wanted and still making a great Batman movie with 1992's Batman Returns, a movie that, yes, while controversial to some because of its dark tone, still ultimately is a great Batman movie in portraying Batman going up against two villains who are so charismatic and so dastardly that you kind of want them to win. And it's great. But the third film on the list is the much beloved, and you can't believe it's this good, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, released in theaters in 1993, a movie that brought all the charm and all the amazing drama of the animated series to the big screen with a big budget, big animation, computer effects, great voice cast continue on their roles from the animated series, and giving us a new original villain to the Batman mythos who completely drives the Batman to his ends, while at the same time he has to fight the Joker in what is very possibly Mark Hamill's greatest performance in the role. And this trio of films cements why the character of Batman became such a huge cultural icon in the 80s and 90s that we let it go on as long as we did, with Batman Forever and Batman and Robin necessitating the reboot later on down the road, because we saw the greatness and the potential of the portrayal of Batman, and it was something we wanted to see more of because of how great these three movies were.
All right, Andrew, your opening statement.
All right, I probably could have not picked. Now I don't want to say 3 completely different movies, but these movies they're just 3 different movies. I picked again Batman Begins, History of Violence, and V for Vendetta. Like I said in the first round, Batman Begins is a fantastic origin story that you get very underrated villains in Ra's al Ghul and the Scarecrow, and just a great origin story of seeing how Batman becomes Batman. And you get, with History of Violence, a great performance by Viggo Mortensen. And I would say, and with V for Vendetta, you get a great story about Guy Fawkes, and great performances by Natalie Portman, and a great performance by Hugo Weaving.
All right, we're gonna start with the debate in 3, 2, 1. 6 minutes.
Okay. V for Vendetta, well, first off, it's not about Guy Fawkes. It's about a guy in a Guy Fawkes mask. We're gonna make that conceit. The main problem I have with both A History of Violence and V for Vendetta are they're not actually faithful adaptations of their source material. A History of Violence is supposed to delve mostly into the character of Tom, the lead character, Viggo Mortensen's character, who is just this schlub living in the town, running a diner, and some mobsters come into town, and all of a sudden his life goes to hell because he fights them off, and we discover this great secret about his past. But ultimately, it's a bad adaptation of that story, because when we get into that much of the meat and potatoes of Tom's backstory, you find out that, yeah, he really did some despicable things in his past, but he's going to try to go back and fix some of those mistakes, not confront them and try to move past it and just live a normal life like we should in this movie. V for Vendetta, they completely get the character of V wrong. They try to make him a hero and a symbol and somebody that you want to root for. Whereas in Alan Moore's original graphic novel, V is meant to be a specter. He could be anybody, but he's nobody because that's what the story needs. He's a facilitator to the chaos and anarchy that story's version of Britain needed. He also completely misses the point. McTeague and the Wachowski brothers who made the movie, they miss the point of the villains. The villains aren't supposed to be some overarching, super amazing dictator like John Hurt's character. It's supposed to be an anti-Thatcherism, anti-Big Brother movie where it's going to take an unknown anonymous person who represents the will of the people to fight them off and shut them down. In this movie, it's just a dude who's good at throwing knives and making quips with words that start with the letter V. Batman Begins, as mentioned, it's a good superhero origin movie, but it led to greater things down the road with people taking the formula that Begins made and copying and pasting it into other superhero origin movies. Iron Man, Captain America, just to name a few. With Tim Burton's Batman, we don't really see the origin. Yeah, we get Bruce's parents dying, but we need that in every Batman movie, apparently, when it's the first of the series. But really, you just delve right into the character of Bruce Wayne and Batman as a dual figure, having to try and stop the amazing performance of Jack Nicholson's Joker, who, while he takes the character in a different direction, he's so enthralling and engaging that for years, people thought, you're never going to be able to do a better Joker than that. With Batman Returns, they don't even try. They give us a very good version of the Penguin that people forget about in Danny DeVito's character. He plays the Penguin as a classic movie monster who happens to be part human. And Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, as I said previously in the match, she is amazing in this movie to the point where we wanted a solo movie of Catwoman. We needed a solo movie of Catwoman. And Mask of the Phantasm, it blows everyone out of the water the first time you see it. It's amazing that they could take the production values of the already amazing animated series and its great voice cast and amp it up to 11, giving us an original villain. Mark Hamill's Joker in this movie, even though he only gets about 15 minutes of screen time, it's an amazing performance that ultimately led to an argument of maybe that's better than Nicholson's Joker. That is a really damn good Joker. Where ultimately, this is three movies that, yes, they're about Batman, but Batman's the most popular character in DC for a reason, because these three movies and the media coming around at the time were so great.
I would argue that Superman is the most popular, but this isn't that fight, so I'm not going to get into that. The problems I have with the Batman and Batman Returns is Batman I think is fine, but I just don't think it holds up well. I watched it recently, and it was kind of boring, and I just didn't think it held up well. Michael Keaton is good, and Jack Nicholson is good, but then again, I don't think it just holds up well. And Batman Returns, I'm sorry, but that's not that great of a movie. I think it holds up even worse than the original Batman. And I mean, Danny DeVito's character, it's just a little cartoonish, and I don't like it. And Michelle Pfeiffer's good, but she can't save this movie. Batman Mask of the Phantasm, yes, it is really, really good, but I think that there are better Batman animated movies out there. I think Return of the Joker is better. I think just there's so many other ones that are better. While with mine, I think that they're very good, they're very solid. That great performances throughout, and I mean they are a little bit newer, but I think that they just hold up nicer. Viggo Mortensen, I think in History of Violence, he's known as the guy from Lord of the Rings. I think in this he shows that he is Viggo Mortensen and not Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. And I think just in V for Vendetta, Natalie Portman's performance is just a very underrated one in general. I think she does it fantastic, and it proves why Natalie Portman is such a great actress.
Okay. Well, honestly, though, this is the problem I have, though, with the whole concept of V for Vendetta as the film they presented us. They give us a completely different version of Evie than the original novel. Evie in the novel is only supposed to be 16 years old. She's supposed to be naive. She's supposed to be growing into her own womanhood and thrust into this world of anarchy to the point where at the end of the film, she becomes V. The book, sorry. She becomes V at the end. Spoiler alert, you should read the novel, though. It's amazing. And the point is, they invest too much time in the character of V. They spend too much time trying to make him into someone you can sympathize with and root for. That's not the point of the original novel by Alan Moore and David Lloyd. So much so that they completely distanced themselves from this adaptation because it had nothing to do with their original book, anti-Thatcherism, anti-Big Brother. Instead, they just painted it as one big allegory for anti-George Bushism of the mid-2000s. With a history of violence, they take what is a very slim source material, but a very tightly paced story about a man who has to confront his past, and they completely twist it by being about a man who wants to keep the future that he built for himself that he doesn't deserve. There's an entire subplot about the teenage son getting beaten up by school bullies and fighting back that feels tacked on and feels pointless and just overly excessively violent for the sake of having a scene that's overly excessively violent with your fists. And Batman Begins, ultimately, yeah, as I pointed out previously.
Done. So I took that. I actually gave you guys a little bit more time. But, yeah.
Thanks.
But I thought Andrew would argue more. But Alex is the one like basically dominating this argument. I mean, verbally wise. I mean, we'll just start with the closing arguments. We'll just start with Andrew.
Well, with who? Me?
You, yeah, Andrew.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure I didn't want to, not go when it was my turn. But anyway, I think just when you compare these three movies to the other three movies, these three movies, if you came to me and I go, all right, would you rather watch Batman Begins, History of Violence, or V for Vendetta, or Batman Returns, and Batman Mask of the Phantasm? I would say I would go with my three because I think they're just more interesting stories. I think that just Batman has been done a lot better than those movies. While I really don't think you can do a History of Violence or a better V for Vendetta, just because of how good they are. Yes, we established that The Dark Knight is the better of the two. But when comparing, your Batman movies and just my Batman movie, I think Batman Begins blows all three of those out of the water. And same thing with History of Violence and V for Vendetta. I think the performances are just overall better in my movies. I think the writing is just overall better in my movies, and I just think that my movies are just overall better.
Okay. Well, I'll say this. You just brought up a point about would you want to watch A History of Violence or V for Vendetta and being the best versions of those stories. If I want the best versions of those two stories, I'll just go back and read the books. They're much better paced. They're much better well told, and ultimately tell the story that the original creators wanted to tell in a much better fashion. As for the performances, you have some amazing performances in this trio of movies that I've picked. In Batman, you've got Michael Keaton's debut role in a movie that everyone was supposed to hate him in, and yet he instantly became the character of Batman. Jack Nicholson, perfectly cast as the Joker, but he proves why. Kim Basinger as Vicky Vale is actually a lot of fun, and you've got Robert Wuhl as Alexander Knox, who the few times he's in the movie, he's a riot. You've also got the debuts of Pat Hingle and Michael Goff as Commissioner Gordon and Alfred, two endearing characters that are the only two who stayed throughout the entire film franchise. Moving on to the second film in my list, Batman Returns, you've got the great performance by Danny DeVito, divisive to some because of Tim Burton's choices as director and how to make the character look, but he still gives it his all to give us a great slimeball villain, and Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, one that was so good that we couldn't try it again for another 20 years until Anne Hathaway played Selena Kyle in The Dark Knight Rises on the big screen. And Mask of the Phantasm, honestly, if you've never seen it, this is why the DC animated films are so good, is because they gave Bruce Timm and Paul Dini and Alan Burnett and their team a shot to make this movie in 1993, and they knocked it out of the park. It was the movie that Siskel and Ebert had to admit and go back on their show later and say, we totally forgot this one, go see it. It's the best Batman movie we've ever seen. 2 instant thumbs up, go watch it. With Batman Begins, you got a mixed reaction because they know there's more that this story is going to tell. At this point, these movies are academic. They're a money-making machine. Of course there was going to be a sequel, and the sequel did way better than Begins. A History of Violence, a lot of people forget that's a David Cronenberg movie, and he and Viggo Mortensen teamed up 2 years later to make an even better movie in Eastern Promises because they saw the work they did together on violence not being the absolute best of what they could possibly do together, and they made it even better 2 years later. And V for Vendetta, again, I go back to the point that while Alan Moore has never liked an adaptation of any of his films, this one especially stung because they got the entire subject matter of the movie wrong for the sake of making a superhero movie in name that ultimately is not what V for Vendetta is supposed to be. And while Hugo Weaving portrays the character as a hero, he's not supposed to. He is just going too over the top in the role of V, and ultimately falls apart and makes something that you kind of have to go back and wince at points, because he's not supposed to be a hero. You're supposed to hate this guy, and you kind of hate yourself for rooting for him in this movie.
All right. Yeah, that was really. I have to be honest. That was not really close of a fight as previous three questions we had so far, and I mean the argument that Alex brought up regarding like how the novels are better than the movies, which was picked by Andrew. I mean that was really a good, that was a great hit, and yeah, and Andrew's counter argument regarding that Batman has been done better. I mean, it actually depends on how you see it regarding the eras of those movies, because like those movies are like directors have their own different style. You have Tim Burton's, like basically dark type of Batman movies, and you have Joe Schumacher's fun type of Batman movies. I mean, it all depends on the time. I mean, of course, over time, Batman could be done better, but you're just talking about those movies in those eras, how they are. And basically, this question, again, once again, goes to Alex. We have, so we are 3-1, and we reached the end of the main round. Now we're going to go to the speed round. Basically, first speed round, you guys have 20 seconds for your opening and 10 seconds for your closing. And just let me look for the question first. All right. Who do it? So the question is, which would be the better Joe Schumacher Batman movies? Batman Forever or Batman and Robin?
Batman Forever.
Forever.
Andrew called Forever first. So we're going to have Andrew as Forever and Alex with Batman and Robin. It's going to be interesting, because I thought Alex is going to get Forever first. All right. Let me set the clock first. It's going to get done. All right. Your 20 seconds starts now.
All right. With Batman Forever, at least you have a serviceable villain in Jim Carrey as the Riddler, and the Batman. Just the Batman performance is better. Batman and Robin. George Clooney is a complete miscast and waste as Batman, and Arnold Schwarzenegger is a complete joke. Bane is looks like a complete.
Time. That's how it is. You should speak fast. Alex, the 20 seconds starts whenever you're ready to speak.
The problem with Batman Forever is that you have a Joel Schumacher film where he's trying to carry on the dark tone of Tim Burton's two movies and yet still find his own voice. With Batman and Robin, if you look at it as him remaking the 1960s Batman series with Adam West and George Clooney in the role instead, it's actually a really fun movie. He's dialing up the camp factor a lot, but he's making a fun superhero movie that you can just sit back, shut your brain off, and just watch Batman beat up some villains and have fun with Robin. It's a really entertaining ride when you think of it in those terms. Whereas Batman Forever tries too hard to be dark at points and really kind of loses the plot halfway through the movie.
All right. So basically, I give you accidentally gave you extra 10 seconds. So for next for next one, Andrew, I'm gonna give you extra 10 seconds.
Okay.
For closing. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. With Batman and Robin, this isn't about what's the funner movie. This is about what the better movie is. And even though I still think Batman Forever is funner, they completely waste every single character in Batman, Robin, Poison Ivy, Mr. Freeze, and Bane. Bane is not exactly what he is, and Mr. Freeze is one of the worst characters of all time in that movie. Uma Thurman.
Time. And going back to Alex, you have 10. I'll give you. This is tough because I gave you extra 10 seconds in the first one, and I gave Andrew extra 10 seconds in the second one. So to be fair, I might have to give you extra 10 seconds. So 20 seconds for you.
Okay.
That's when we're ready to speak.
The ultimate problem with Batman Forever is that, again, he's straddling the line between the darkness of Tim Burton's movies and the lighthearted tone that he's trying to establish with a neon Technicolor dream that really doesn't work in meshing those two styles. With Batman and Robin, he drops all of that pretext, wants to make a fun superhero movie that comes off in the vein of the Adam West series from 1966, and when you take it in that embraced form, it's a really fun movie to just sit back and watch. Schwarzenegger is hilarious as Mr. Freeze.
Done. Just give me a sec. Point goes to Alex for this one.
Nice. Wow.
I mean, Andrew, I have to apologize because I wasn't really paying attention to the clock when Alex was talking.
Okay. Cool.
Maybe it's just his charm. Moving on before we get lost again. All right, we know like there's a lot of movies coming up in the DCEU. So my question would be, which movie would you rather? Would you be interested in watching? I mean, the ones that have been announced, either Wonder Woman 2 or Shazam.
Shazam.
Wonder Woman 2.
We'll have Andrew with Wonder Woman 2 and Alex with Shazam. I mean, yeah, both released in 2019. So I'll give you once again 10 seconds for two of them. Alright. I'll give Alex the first go in this 20 seconds.
Right.
Whenever you're set.
The history of Shazam as a character is an interesting one because he was created to be a character who was meant to be exactly like Superman, but magical. The fact that we're getting a Shazam movie finally in 2019 is something amazing if you go back through the history of comics. Zachary Levi is going to be perfectly cast as the Captain Marvel role, the big red cheese. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, as Captain Adam Black Adam is amazing casting, and the lighthearted nature of the Fawcett Comics characters is something that could lend very well to helping...
Stop. All right, time. Okay. Andrew, your turn.
Okay, I think the big problem with Shazam is you don't know how it's going to turn out. With Wonder Woman 2, you know exactly how it's going to turn out, and it's going to turn out great, just like the first one. Because Gal Gadot does fantastic in the first one, and Patty Jenkins does fantastic in the first one. You know exactly what you're going to get with Wonder Woman 2, or with Shazam, you don't know what you're going to get. It could be a complete misfire of a movie. You don't know how any one of these roles are going to go.
Time. Alright, I'm going to go back to Alex's 10 seconds.
Okay. We thought the same thing about Wonder Woman, and look exactly how that turned out. Shazam is a character who has not gotten his true due on the big screen ever. He is a cornerstone of the history of comics, and I think the potential is there with these filmmakers and this cast to make it a truly amazing superhero movie.
Time. See, that went so quick. So, Andrew, your 10 seconds starts when we're ready to speak.
Okay, I think the problem is just the track record of the DCEU. Yes, Wonder Woman is the only good DCEU film, so what's to say about any of the other DCEU films? At least with Wonder Woman, we know what we're going to get with a good film.
Alright, so that, just give me 1 sec to gather my thoughts. I think with Andrew's argument regarding that we know what to expect since Wonder Woman has been developed, has been already a developed character. I mean, that argument is I think that argument wins this question. Andrew, we got the point.
Nice.
So we are now at
I believe we're at 4-2 with me in the lead.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I think you got the fourth question. I mean, the fifth question first. I didn't. Ah, shit. I mean, Alex, you've already actually won.
Okay, I mean,
I wasn't going
cool.
to say anything, so.
This is definitely going down to bloopers. I mean, Matt, when he says this, he's gonna have a good laugh. Right. So, because in my head, I thought it's still like 2-2 or something.
No, it wasn't 2-2.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Alright. So yeah, Alex, you won the game. I mean, even with that extra question, I mean, I'm not
That's
sure
not
if
it's not even going to count towards mine because he already got the win. I don't
yeah,
even want it to count. I don't even want it to count. That's not fair to anybody else. So
yeah, it's not fair. But Andrew, I mean, had it been like 2-2, Andrew would have been maybe been on his comeback. I mean, I screwed this up. So
maybe,
Alex,
maybe if I was a little faster picking my questions, maybe it would have been differently. Because honestly, the 30 points, honestly, the 3 ones that you won, those were the 3 that I chose. And he goes, "Nah, Alex already chose those." So I'm like, damn. But
I mean, it's just that it all comes down to how, not just how you're giving facts, and it's also comes down to how hard you are hitting against the other person's, you know, and basically Alex is beating a dead meat from that on.
Well, I wouldn't say it was that bad, but
So Alex, after that, any thoughts? What do you want to say?
honestly, I know the scoreboard's not going to look like it, but that match was a lot closer on practicality than it looks on paper. Andrew, you put up one hell of a fight against me, and honestly, as I always say when I have a close fight, hands up and hats off to you, man. That was a great match. Honestly, though, I've grown up with DC. I've been loving DC for 3/4 of my 30+ years of life. Yes, I'm that old. So I have a lot of knowledge stored up here about DC and a lot of passion, and I'm glad I just got an avenue to show it off. And I really want to thank you guys here at Battleground for letting me come in and talk DC for an hour, because that's really all I wanted to do.
Andrew, anything is sweet? Anything to say?
No, I think even if I had the questions or the answers I wanted, I still think it would have been one tough fight because Alex, he's a damn good fighter. I want to see more of this dude, because he's just great. If he could do this good, I want to see what he does, with his just general movie questions. He's a great fighter. He 100% deserves this one.
All right, all that. I mean, he's gonna have a good time, watching this, and he's gonna say, "Wait a minute, it's 4-1. Why is it still continuing?" So I'm just hoping like it all goes down in the editing bay. That he's gonna do something good with this, or maybe he does something funny.
Sorry, Matt.
I'm the one giving him more work. All right. All right. So I mean, this has been fun, and I mean, don't forget, guys, to subscribe and keep up with the matches over here at Movie Battleground. I mean, subscribe to the channel. I mean, Matt also gives his own movie reviews. I mean, he's gonna do his Justice League review in a while. He saw it yesterday, so keep a lookout for that. I mean, also keep a lookout for this Friday Justice League. Today it comes out. Technically, I mean, when this records, when this release, yeah, it comes out today. So have fun watching the movie, and with me as your host, Subrat Sharma. This is Movie Battleground. Peace out.